Hello, welcome. Happy Monday. Welcome to the HR Huddle. Hello, Jen.
Hello.
We're glad to be with you again. And, looking at our weeks, and I don't know about you, but we're planning year end. We have some new hires coming on board. We are trying to figure out what we have to do and what's deferring. I was doing my work to-do list and saying, January, and then what we have to get done. And one of the things that, Jen and I were talking about, and we've been talking both to clients about, but like I said, we're hiring also is, what are we doing to make sure we have a awesome onboarding experience for our team members and orientation process and checklist. And maybe more importantly, that it's consistent and we're handling it across offices. We're handling it for our remote workers, where we're still remote or we're hybrid or in some kind of blended environment. And there's just some strategies that, we've implemented, we've been doing for a long time that we've also been teaching a lot of firms about. And we thought maybe we'd talk about some of those, details. And Jen, I don't know if you want to, say anything to set that up or thoughts on the topic in general before we dive into some of the tactical details.
Well, I think that, they say that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And we make the first impression, of course, in the interview process and in the offer process. We have the multiple opportunities to make these impressions, but starting and that first, 90 days matters. And it sort of sets the tone for who we expect them to be and what the possibilities are with them, and also who we are and how much we care and how much we value talent by how we treat them when they start. And we have seen it all. We have seen the entire range. And also Tamara and I have worked together since T-Rex walked the earth, for a long time now. We've worked together at multiple employers, and we worked in a really high growth environment, and we were hiring people like absolute crazy, and we ended up, having kind of over the years varying degrees of quality of onboarding, depending on when our busy season was and who was assigned to it and that sort of stuff. So I feel like we've seen it all, and we really think it matters, and yet it feels like sort of a tactical. You use the words tactical. Is this tactical? And it feels tactical, and it might feel a little bit like we'll just hope somebody does it. She's going to work in your group. Good luck, or whatever that is. But it should be intentional. And so we thought we'd just take a few minutes and spend some time with you talking about things that we've seen that really seem to work, and your comments are welcome along the way too. We'd love to have you chime in on things that you've seen work or that you think are do's or don'ts.
Absolutely. And I see Emily laughing at here. She's in your group. Good luck. And we just had somebody start today, and she's going to report to me. And if I owned her onboarding and orientation right now, when we're in our peak busy season, we're back to travel a little bit, but when we're not, we're moderating or we're on coaching calls or feedback calls, like back to back. It would not set up our new program coordinator for success. So Emily owns our onboarding, and she created the orientation process and checklist with my input and then Beth's input. And then we made assignments to the team. And she had all of that prepared before Sarah started today.
Way before,
like 2 weeks before. And also laptop is set up, email is set up, confirm, information to make sure we're set up for payroll. Just all those details that we can get set up before, so it is seamless when she starts. She has access to people's calendars. She has access to Teams. She has access to, we had a welcome lunch today, and we did it virtual, and we just grabbed a lunch and we came, and whoever could come for however long you could come, we scheduled an hour, and it was perfect. Come and welcome and meet, Sarah face to face. And, we would do that in the office. So we need to do that remote, but in our blended environment, it's really important to pay attention. How are we doing that? You're hiring somebody that's going to report to you, and they're in a different office. Find somebody over there that can take them out to lunch if they're coming into the office. But that checklist and that owner, I think, Jen, what you were pointing to is like the first fundamental place to start. And it's often the thing that we step over and we say, good luck. Who owns it? Oh, I thought you were doing that. I thought you were doing that. And then it's like we're scrambling, and it's not a good impression on our poor person or people, group of people, our new staff or interns or whatever it is that are starting. So, and by the way, I'm just going to say, I think we do a better job on interns. We probably have a lot of this down for interns, but we don't for experienced hires. So that might be where you need to look and say, bring that, gold standard, the red carpet that we roll out for interns, bring it to every single hire in your firm.
Yeah, first years and experienced.
Yep.
The intern experience is probably better, more welcoming and more, we bend over backwards. It's like we want them to keep picking us or something. But once they accept a job, they picked us. And so we maybe don't spend as much time really making them feel good. And so I agree with you, Tamara. We like to welcome somebody when they choose to work for us and send them, like a handwritten note and some premiums or swag, so that they have some logoed swag before their start date. Because we're remote and we're completely remote, there is no come into an office. There's quite a bit of planning and shipping that is required in order for people to have all of the things that they need on their first start date, so they don't feel like it's this kind of sloppy, cobbled together, difficult thing. But they still are getting boxes and having to open them and set up their own system. And then, part of what we use is something called an onboarding checklist, and it's this planning tool that we use, but it's also a project management tool. And we view the onboarding of a person as a project that we're managing. It's a positive project, and they're not the project. It's their onboarding that's the project. But the first tab of our training checklist, which we'd be happy to share with you all, is the kind of onboarding that everybody goes through, regardless of role. And it's things like, getting IT policies and going through the handbook and getting set up for insurance or whatever that list of stuff is. And it has who is going to take them through those things that everybody goes through, and what is the priority order of those things, and how do they reach that person? Because in our case, they're going to reach to schedule and get on their calendar to get their orientation. So that's tab one, is like the everybody gets it. And if you're hiring multiple people, you try to group them together and give them those things together because everybody gets them.
Or better yet, record it, have them listen to it, and then go answer questions. We should be recording all of those everybody gets or consistent kind of, onboarding experiences or training that we need to do.
I agree, 100%. And that means, by the way, that you may want to do them on Zoom, where it's easy to record and everybody has the same size screen, and you're not trying to hope that the tripod worked and that, it could be heard and seen and everything, unless you've got really high quality recording equipment. So anyway, just, to use your normal recording platforms, Teams, Zoom, whatever it is. But the second tab is specific to their role. And it requires that the hiring manager really think through, like, what do they need to learn? What are their duties and responsibilities? And in what order will we be transitioning those things to them? And so what sort of learning will they need to get ready for those first priorities? And that tab is full of all the things they need to learn or be taken through, and who's going to do it. So there's often lots of names on there from the different groups or from the various orientations inside a group, and then the priority that they're going to get that. So we like to just say A, B, or C, so that the person coming on board, they get this training checklist and they say, well, I can see all my priorities at A's, and I know exactly who I need to get with for those. Now, sometimes we'll put in dates, like this is the date you're getting it, because we've already calendared it, or sometimes we haven't, and that new employee is going to go calendar it. They'll access a calendar, the person that's on that A priority, and they'll go set up an hour or whatever it says, how long it'll take, and they'll get that going. And so that's how they do it. Now, one big thing to pay attention to about the training checklist is, the new person generally comes in with an empty desk. We call it, they have empty desk syndrome. The rest of us are like, drowning, and that's why they're coming, by the way. They're coming because we are ready to move some of the stuff from our desk to them. And so they should manage their training checklist. That is their very first project at Convergence Coaching. And we can tell how serious somebody is and how wonderful they're going to be at being proactive and showing ownership and really, being assertive and making stuff happen and being accountable by how they manage their own training checklist. And if they don't manage it well, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign for how they'll manage other things, other projects that they're going to be responsible for. So it is kind of an interesting way of getting somebody going, but also, figuring out who they are a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we do have a mix of, having some stuff scheduled. We've talked about in a previous like learning HR huddle, the idea of the gradual release of responsibility model. And, it starts with shadowing. It starts with, I'm going to do, you're going to watch. So what are those key priorities that they can come watch? Those are some of those dates that might already be set. Like you're going to come and listen to this meeting, or you're going to come and shadow this webinar, or, you're going to come and, participate, in this audit that we might be doing. And so, finding those places to, participate. And then by wins in the orientation checklist, okay, you're going to start doing some of these pieces. And it might not be a specific date, but it's like, by January, whatever, by February, and we can have blocks, and then they can drive it. And we talk about huddles, and we should schedule huddles with these folks. Check in. Who is checking in? How are you progressing against it? What questions do you have? Where are you not making connections? Where is it confusing? Like, where can we answer some questions or clarify? Provide some context and background. Because often, and you can do it right up front. We should do it both, but we need to do it again because it's in a blank slate. And then all of a sudden, they're getting all this information and acclimated. And then you say it again. It's like, now I get it. Now I'm able to make those connections. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do for our new hires is to help them make those connections. Hopefully they'll start drawing themselves, like Jen said, that'll tell you, a lot about the individual, where they are making questions, where they're asking smart questions and they're saying, does this like that? And you're like, thank God. So that we can, continue to move on and build from that. It's super important.
Yes. Well, and, one thing that we might want to touch on briefly is this idea that, in the past, especially in the multi-office environment, but really in a single office environment, we've sort of, it's a little bit like every man for himself or every group for themselves. So like we hired, 3 people in that office, and we've hired 2 people over here, and they join and they have a completely different experience. Or Tamara and Emily onboard one person who reports to Tamara, and that person's experience is awesome. And then we onboard somebody who's going to report to me, and somebody else helps me with it, and is the primary owner of that, and the experience is less awesome. And it's because we're not, we haven't sort of mandated, hey, let's approach this consistently. Let's not reinvent the wheel every time we do this thing. Let's set some core values for our orientation process. Like we want to be warm and welcoming. We want it to feel organized and put together. We want the person to be empowered. You set up whatever your list of core values are that you want all the people to feel when they are onboarded. And one of the things that happened in this pandemic is people took their onboarding remote. And whether they worked remotely or not, across offices, they said, hey, we're going to have a central onboarding process, and we're going to have one central way of doing it, whatever that is. And we're going to make the experience of our new people be consistent. We saw the same thing, by the way, with internship programs. Firms that were letting each office or each department kind of run their own internship program, they went, wait a minute, that makes no sense. We're going to bring that central too. So anyway, just a few thoughts about how remote sort of changed the game on centralization.
Well, and that doesn't mean we're not going to have custom aspects to that onboarding or orientation by group.
Right.
or by office, because there might be some unique things. And that's the idea of the multiple tabs you were talking about, if you think about it in Excel format. So it's, here's the general stuff. Everybody's going to get it. But the overarching, this is how we're going to deliver it. These are the values. Then here's everything and who's going to deliver it. So we have consistency. So Tamara always does this piece, or Emily always does this piece. Jen does this piece, or we have a couple people that do it maybe. And we group it together. We record as much as possible. We allow them to read things, but then we're going to have the custom pieces. But we're clear about what that is. So we're not going rogue, trying to figure that out. What does that look like? And I think right now, as we're hiring people, bringing them on board, we need to think about holiday schedules are coming up. We might have some holiday fun coming up. Make sure they're looped in on that. What else do they need to know about year-end processes? It is our busy season right now. So you look at our calendars, it might freak you out a little bit. We're like, don't let it freak you out. Find 30 minutes or ask us for 30 minutes. Set them up for the season that you're in. And so there might be a firm season we're in, but then again, by group, might look a little different for consulting or a little bit different for audit right now, or the tax planning that we're doing. But setting them up so they know what they're coming into, I think, is really important.
Yes, and that way they don't feel weird about how people seem to be receiving them if it's a little busy, but also they don't sort of step in it with other people.
Right.
They don't start off on the wrong foot because they were thinking, hey, your name's on this grid, yeah, exactly. They're maybe they have more empathy, I guess, for what's happening around them. And it's a delicate balance, because there really isn't anything more important than us onboarding somebody, warmly and correctly, because it's super inefficient to do it otherwise. And also, we've spent all this time and energy to try to find that perfect person. And we've been so selective and careful in hiring them. And so kind of sloppily doing the onboarding, I don't know. It's easy to do. I understand why we would do it, but it just seems like a super counterproductive.
And then we let people know right away when they come on board. We might even say it in the interview process that we are going to do a 90-day review.
Oh, yes.
And it's a two-way review, because we want to give you feedback on where you are against that orientation and onboarding checklist. And then just general, feedback about, how you're fitting, performance, what we see as next. So it could be any of those things. And then we want feedback from them. How are we doing? What do they need from us? Is there anything we should stop doing or start doing? We like to use the keep, stop, start format. And so we ask them to, think about that, write that down. We write it down and share it with them so we can have a two-way dialogue. Like, how is it going so far? One of the questions we ask, is this the kind of position you expected it to be? What were the surprises? What have you liked so far? What do you want to see more of? Or, what do you want to learn? And that's the stop. But we can just do a general check-in and then, share some of that feedback using that keep, stop, start approach. It's a lifesaver. And it also helps them get feedback to know they're on track or where they're not on track, what they can do to get on track. And again, what's next? So we might plan all the way well for 90 days, but then we don't talk to them for a year until their performance review. And then it's just like it went downhill. So build in, schedule that 90-day review. It will just make your people thrive, and it'll have clarity for you too about, what's next for them. So then you can figure out what kind of assignments to make, who needs to do it, et cetera.
And we don't wait for 90 days to give them any feedback. And we don't wait to ask how things are going. And so like Tamara mentioned, Emily's in charge of Sarah's onboarding this next, let's say 90 days. And they'll meet weekly to go through the training checklist and to check in on what's working and not working. And Emily will, knock down roadblocks for Sarah and make suggestions about how to approach it differently if there are things that aren't quite getting where they need to. And they'll troubleshoot together regularly. So she'll always have somebody, a shepherd, if you will, who's constantly caring about her success in getting what she needs to really be launched. And that's what anybody who's any good always wants. Right. I want to be launched. I want to know my job. I want to start perfecting it. I want to make it better. I want to have confidence here. And so that's what your onboarding also needs to instill, that sort of independence and confidence. And staying close to them will help do that.
Yep. So we hope this gives you some ideas to go back and look at your process and say, where can we bring consistency? Where can we empower people? Where do we need to assign an owner? And just have a clear process. If you're interested in that checklist, let us know. We'd also love to hear what you've been doing, especially where you've been pivoting the past 18 months in your orientation and onboarding. So hopefully it makes a difference for you between now and the end of the year. First of year, January, I know is a big hiring time. So we thought it was important to stop and talk about it for a couple of minutes. And we will be here next week. I know it's a short week, but we will be here next week. We're going to talk about gratitude and maybe a gratitude board. So I think that's going to be our topic next week. So we would love to have you come join us. And we look forward to it. Have a productive week this week. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.